Hi everyone, welcome back to Keeping Up with the Chaldeans. I'm Anthony Toma, your host, and today we're here with Alexander Karana, an attorney with Breesen. I knew I'd get it somehow. And we have Estia Elias from back in the day, a throwback.
Guest appearance.
My first cousin.
Yeah.
Supporting my cousin.
So these two were on a trip to Iraq, and they're going to share some of the adventures and excursions that they had there, along with a lot of experiences. You'll see photos throughout the episode that our dear Mark is going to populate the episode with. Take it away. Why don't you introduce yourself, since I did such a poor job, and kind of give some people a little bit of a background.
You're great, Anthony. First, thanks for having me on, and
of course.
I have my cousin on as well.
Yep.
My name's Alexander Karana. I'm a patent attorney, intellectual property attorney with Von Breesen and Roper.
Oh, you jacked it up too?
I'm based out of Chicago, but I have clients nationwide. Being an attorney for 2.5 years, I've been selected to best lawyers, ones to watch in America, and super lawyers in Illinois, Rising Stars by my peers. So, I have a lot of experience in business and intellectual property, technology, branding as well. A lot of my work is trademarked. So
awesome.
I studied, my background in undergrad is chemical engineering, and then, went to law school. And so I studied patent law and then, expand from there.
So to touch on that a little bit before we get into the trip,
Sure.
How can people get a hold of you that need your services?
Social media is always an easy way to get a hold of me. My email is alexander.karana@vonbreesen.com. You can go to Google me as well, LinkedIn. And
what are your social handles?
Alex Karana, so you can go just Google Alex Karana or on Instagram or whatever. So.
Okay. Well, that makes it easy. Let's get a little...
I'm back, everybody.
Yeah, say hello.
Everyone's been asking you where I've been.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, I just came to support my cousin. We ended up we signed up for a trip, and we didn't know that we both signed up for this homeland experience.
Really?
So once I found out he was going, I was just double down, so sure.
That's a lie. She was asking me a bunch of times, should I go?
I wasn't sure.
And I said, I don't want to go for 2 weeks. Can I go for a week? And I said, listen, it's going to be a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
You're going to want to go as long as you can. When you get there, you're probably not going to want to leave.
Yeah. What I thought was funny about this trip is that we both signed up for a homeland experience without even telling each other. We're first cousins, our moms are sisters. And what's really cool is we've developed this passion for our background and history that was not influenced by our family at all. They have nothing to do with it. We both
actually separately, for sure.
What was that?
At different times too. I don't even think we did it together.
Yeah, for sure. So,
but you kind of both started diving into history and where you came from and your roots.
Yeah, and
That's
we agree
amazing.
on our background, and we're both super passionate. So yes, going on a trip together was just an experience of a lifetime, and I'm so happy I got to do it with my cousin.
So who organized the trip, and then how did you all decide to go, and then what did you see?
So we went with a group called Nineveh Rising. It's a new nonprofit to help really our people in the Nineveh Plains, and it was started by Chris and Rena Salem.
Okay.
And honestly, they did an amazing job. They took us to some of the places, and I can tell you they did an amazing job because of all the responses and comments and messages I got on social media from my family, my friends, even just my social media followers, and then even people who started adding me on social media over and over again, which was it was incredible. They would send me messages like, I can't wait to go. And I think for our generation, there's always been a want, a connection to go back home.
Yeah.
I've wanted it my whole life because you just hear the stories that my father told me, my grandparents told me, probably the same thing with you and SDs and everybody in our community here in Detroit. We've always wanted to go there, and we've always seen war and the bad side. I wanted to go see the good side, the nature, the oldest sites in Christianity, some of the historical sites of our ancient kings and vacation houses of ancient kings. So it was really a great way to just connect with the roots, because there's no other place in the world you can connect with your roots than that area.
Right.
So you can't break that connection, and it's a way to really just reconnect with your culture, your heritage, your traditions, and really find out who you really are, and meet people at the same time.
Right. So why don't you share the itinerary of the trip, and as you kind of mentioned that places that you stopped, maybe you can share an experience and you guys can kind of ping pong off each other.
That's smart. Yeah. So I want to add our Aunt Sahar, who is from Iraq, messaged me that we saw more than she did. She lived there for 20 years.
Yeah.
So Chris and Rena, the leaders of Nineveh Rising, really packed in so many different experiences that we would not have seen without Nineveh Rising. So I definitely want to shout that out. So we went to Ankara.
And we have to shout out a group in Iraq, in the Nineveh Plains called Here is Assyria. They have an amazing social media. Everyone should follow them.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Here is Assyria.
Here is Assyria?
Yeah, and they show some of the best places in the homeland, and they actually coordinated a lot of the stuff. And
Before I forget, is there another trip date planned with Nineveh Rising?
Most likely in April. And
Okay.
I believe they're going to offer 2 trips a year, like in the spring and the fall.
Okay.
So we definitely recommend going. I know things are a little bit difficult right now, but I'm hoping that, things get better and people are able to go. Similar to Alex, Iraq was on like the top of my list. I chose going there instead of Italy.
Okay.
So, but I'm really happy I did. So we basically went to like Ankara.
so we flew into Erbil,
Yes.
is where we flew in. And honestly, flying there is very straightforward, very easy, like any other country in my experience.
So you went from the U.S. to...
We went to U.S. to Amman. I spent actually a few
Jordan.
days in Jordan beforehand, and then from
Oh, you look like you got your hair down there. Just kidding.
and then from Amman, we went to Erbil.
Yeah.
You could also go from Istanbul to Erbil
Okay.
if you wanted. And then we went so we stayed in Erbil, and there's a region in Erbil, like a neighborhood called Ankara. That's where a lot of the Saraya live, Chaldeans, Christians, Assyrians, Syriacs. That's where they live.
What's it called?
Ankara.
Ankara? Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually where the airport is, and it's actually where the U.S. Embassy is in Erbil. It's a consulate embassy. So the next day, was the first kind of villages we went to in the Nineveh Plains, and the first village we went to was Karem Lesh, and we went to a monastery called Mar Barbara, where there was Maronite nuns and brothers
Okay.
who had came there after ISIS, Daesh. So Daesh is another name for ISIS, for
Yep.
those that don't know. They came there really honestly to give to provide hope to the Christians to stay there
Wow.
and not move. And one of the nuns was 21 years old, so it was kind of very moving to be like hearing that from somebody who's 21 in some of the dangerous zone in Iraq. You know? I mean,
someone that's so grounded in her faith.
exactly, yeah, and that young too
It's
as
a big
well.
deal.
And honestly, they were inspired by 25 people, so we went with 25 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was
Most
so
of
fun.
us were 25 to I'm 33, in that age range, and just us being there, everywhere we went, people like received hope. Like you could see it in their eyes, just like
Yeah.
glee up,
Like
oh,
celebrities.
Wow.
yeah,
really?
like,
Yeah,
it
they treat
was,
you amazing, I want
yeah.
to say, because
Wow.
they want you to have the best
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, and then right after that, we went to really the first all Christian village was Baghdad. And unfortunately, the last day I was there was, the situation with Baghdad.
Yeah.
But being there in the first day, it was honestly amazing because you're on your own land where your
How many
roots are.
days were you there?
Week 12.
10 to 12 days.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
Baghdad?
No,
just one.
in
One
Nineveh
day.
Plains.
Okay,
Yeah, so this is
okay.
the first day.
Okay.
This is the first day. So the first day was we're walking the streets, we're like hanging out with the mayor and
Oh, yeah?
stuff. Yeah, and at night it was great because you see all the shops. All our people own the shops.
Mm-hmm.
All our people are talking, and like I said, after Daesh, all
What
the
language
Christians,
are they speaking?
So after
Sure.
Daesh, all the people moved into Baghdad. It became kind of like the holding grounds for the Christians after
Okay.
for rebuilding it, and they all speak Surah.
Really?
They all speak Surah.
Oh,
And
wow.
what I noticed was they're all
amazing.
speaking with each other. There's Chaldean Catholics there, there's Syriacs there, there's an Assyrian Church of the East members there too. And they all
Uh-huh.
speak Surah. Yes, there are interchangeable words that are dialect, but if you go back, the classical language is the same. We speak Surah. It's a dialect of Aramaic, and I'm studying Surah actually now, so to learn. And I'm noticing it's the same language. We speak different dialects. We say different words, similar to maybe like there's different phrases that people say in the southern states in America versus northern states.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? So,
Y'all.
but essentially it's the same language,
Uh-huh.
and they're all communicating with each other, and they don't see each other as different. Chaldean, Assyrian, Syriac.
Mm-hmm.
They all see each other as Saraya, as one people.
Well, they're all in the same boat.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But they go to the same churches. They praise the same saints. They speak the same language.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of the same. They have the same history.
Yeah.
So where are you going to learn this sort of?
So I've always wanted to learn. I've been searching for like one-on-one tutors for forever because I think that's the best way to learn, really.
Yep.
And then you supplement it with like being back home. And for a long time, I couldn't find any.
Mm-hmm.
They were only in the church with the group classes and stuff. But now I've made friends in Nineveh Plains, and they're willing to like talk to me once a week. And I also found
On
Zoom, whatever, Discord,
Okay.
Instagram.
Wow.
You can
I
call.
saw that you just spoke with someone in your last interview.
Yeah,
Sure.
it was. It's going to be a new series that we
Great.
have that we're going to kind of graduate from less simple one word
Terms,
exchange
I saw that. I
terms
want to learn, so I'll
into.
watch.
Yeah. I hope you do,
Yeah.
and make sure you like and subscribe. That's kind
Yeah,
of
and
I've
important too.
subscribed. I made sure today.
Short answer is I found a tutor, and he's a law student in Belgium
Okay.
who was forced to learn Sureth
Oh,
because he moved in with his grandfather, and his grandfather only spoke Sureth, didn't speak
Okay.
English or
so he's
Arabic.
Chaldean too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he has taught other people, and he's even taught non-Assyrians, non-Chaldeans Sureth, like people who are just interested in languages, and he's created his own tutoring format.
Right. So I don't know if you. I'm just going to ask. Do Assyrians speak Sureth?
Yes.
Asur is Sureth.
Asur.
Like the word Asur, Assyrian, and Sureth are kind of interchangeable.
Okay. Just,
So like the original term for Assyrians would be Asher. It comes from biblically. There's Noah, his son, his second son was Shem, and from Shem come five. What they saw 5 nations. He had 5 sons. One was Asher, one was Arpachshad, one was Elam, one was Aram, and one was I forget the 5th one, but like Lydia.
probably the black sheep.
Yeah. So Assyrians come from Asher, and it's one of the first nations to be mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
Abraham comes from the line of the Arpachshad generations later. So really, we're talking Sureth has been around since a long, long time.
Since the flood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At least.
so Assyrian, Sureth, Suriah, kind of
Yeah.
like that also is what
They
taught
drop the
us.
A and the A in front of it, and they end up shortening over time the etymology. So you get
Okay.
Did you know
Sureth,
Asher means
Ashariah,
to begin?
Suriah. Is it?
Did
I
you
don't
know? Yeah, so the beginning, like shore is begin. I
I'm not
believe.
sure. That I'm not sure.
But yeah, so back to our
Well, you'll
trip.
look it up though, right?
Yeah,
No, yeah.
it means to begin.
There's gonna be. Listen, I know
Yeah.
I'm an attorney. There's gonna be a ton of people fact checking this. I'm sure.
God bless them.
But I'm happy to have them fact check me.
Yeah, and if
Yeah.
we can get the facts, if those aren't the facts, and we can get them, then
Exactly.
we'll all,
I have an engineering
we'll all
background.
embrace them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So also to talk more about Baghdita, that was the first village we went to, and we got to hang out with the mayor, and he took us all around. It was a Monday night, and to me, it kind of reminded me of like Birmingham, like everyone was
Really?
like eating ice
Yeah,
cream
it was
and
cool.
walking
It was
around.
really cool.
It was so beautiful. So
Yeah.
we're so devastated about what's
And-
happened.
Yeah. And then like walking around, you can't pay for anything.
Oh, they're so
Everybody-
giving.
oh,
You can't
really?
pay for
So
anything.
giving.
It's you're trying to like there's baklava on street foods and stuff. I'm trying to give money. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's easy. like
wow.
like
Yeah.
whatever. And he's like, no problem. And he gives me like 10 of them. And I'm like, here you go. He's like, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
no. I'm like, what do you want? What do you want?
Yeah.
He goes, it's easy. Come back again. You come back
my
again, you
God.
can pay. If you come back, you can pay.
Yeah.
But there was a common theme. I'll be honest with you. They were all of them were
Giving.
saying we're like family.
Yeah.
But we just want you to come back and visit.
Yeah,
And I think that's kind of the overall arching theme.
that's amazing.
I want to add, so before the trip, I've been on a few mission trips before, and
Mm-hmm.
I brought extra cash because I thought I was going to see like our people in
Yeah.
poverty. They kind of told
Yeah.
us that. So I come there.
To help them out.
Yeah, like I wanted to, like we wanted to stimulate the economy. That
Right,
was
right.
like one of the reasons that Nineveh Rising has created this trip.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
our people are so resilient and they're so giving. Even there's 2 or 3 little kids that I tried to give money to, and they're like, no.
Oh my
I've
God.
never
Yeah.
seen that in my life.
Yeah.
Like, we're not aggressive. We're so giving. Like our people, it just showed me we didn't feel that aggression. Like
No.
we would feel from, and they want to give to you. So it just kind of like made me so happy to see and just like reinforce
That's
like
amazing.
how our community is.
And then we even went to Mosul, and we had dinner or lunch with like Kurdish business leaders and some of the priests that were in Mosul, and even like the Kurdish members were saying, just our presence alone, gave them hope for,
Yeah.
for
Wow.
Iraq. It wasn't just our people saying this. It was Kurdish and Muslims were saying this. Just our presence alone, and you could feel it too that they were just like, oh wow, like
So don't feel forgotten.
Yeah, exactly.
People that got out
Exactly.
became
Because they have
successful.
felt forgotten.
Yeah.
They said that was like the biggest group. The mayor of Baghdad said we were like the biggest group of Americans that he's seen.
And definitely the youngest, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, other groups have gone, they're usually older.
Yeah, that's got to be encouraging to them.
So first, when they see young, you know, younger generation, you know, and a lot of us were successful there. There's, have their own businesses. There were a few people in medical industry, a couple doctors, I think. You know, I'm an attorney as well. There's engineers with us. So, you know, they were inspired, you know, that we were there.
That's great.
And can I say one thing about Nineveh Rising? They're doing not just like tourism, but they, you know, one way for them to get the economy up is to build some tourism back there. So we go there and spend some money. But they're also trying to create jobs. So people who hire remote workers here, they've built out a system to get jobs for our people there.
Yeah.
So if anyone's
I talked
interested,
to Joe Babby. I guess he's helping with the technology.
Oh,
okay.
That's going to bring that component to the Nineveh Rising. Yeah.
So I kind of want to go over the villages that we saw, and maybe Anthony can ask us questions because we won't have time to go over all of them. But we went to Tel Kev, we went to Batnaya, we went to Al Kosh, and I want to say you can make your Iraq trip your own. Nineveh Rising also encourages, like, you don't have to follow their schedule.
Yeah.
I'm happy we went to all the villages. I will say that we saw a lot of monastery churches that were in the mountains. I didn't expect that, but we
That's
saw.
Al Kosh, right?
There's like 3 of them.
Marmeti is a big one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even funny, even Muslims have gone to Marmeti. And one of them, so I got home and I was like, Dad, I went to Marmeti. And he's like, oh, so you climbed all the way up to Marmeti? And I was like, no, we took a car.
Oh, jeez.
So about
scary. I was looking down the whole
20,
time.
30 years ago, there was an Iraqi official who he was only able to have daughters. And so he went to Marmeti because it's known as the healer. And he prayed and he ended up for a son. And he ended up having a son. So he wanted everybody to have the ability to go to Marmeti. And he built the road that goes all the way up to Marmeti.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then the other one in Al
awesome.
Kosh you mentioned is Rabban Hermes Monastery, which used to be part of the Church of the East. And then in the 1800s, because of like attacks on Al Kosh, it got abandoned. And then it was actually redeveloped and renovated by a Chaldean Catholic and given to the Chaldean Church in the 1800s. And you know, the first Chaldean Catholic patriarch came from Rabban Hermes in the 1500s.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I think unexpected was that we went to so many monasteries and churches that were like in the mountains and caves. We even went into caves.
Yeah.
Apparently, people like, I think the strategy of putting it in the mountain is they wanted to like hide, not be able
Of course,
to be like reached. So that was like really beautiful. Everyone on the trip loved seeing those monasteries for sure.
Were there ruins, churches in ruins that you saw?
So
Oh, yeah.
was the most.
I mean, especially after Daesh,
Yeah.
of course.
The
Church Libidisho Sacred Heart in the middle of Tel Kev, the largest Chaldean Catholic church in the world. The main church is unfortunately destroyed, and it's still marble and everything, but it's just like not in a condition.
But so it could be
There is a separate church, of course.
There's
a separate
in
church.
This one church.
That somebody paid for and they redeveloped, and we had mass there.
Okay.
We went to Mar Raha. That was another church, and that had been touched by Daesh. And you know, they told me that it would only cost $2,000 to repair it.
Really?
And I was like,
2,000 US.
2,000 US.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe we get you 5 or 10.
Yeah.
Or more.
Or more.
I heard that
But they
Tel
have
Kev-
a lot of these places have hotel rooms. They had hotel rooms that can be redeveloped, but before Daesh, people would go there and stay there at these churches. And there's a lot of hotel rooms, and they're actually, the beautiful courtyards and honestly beautiful churches.
All the churches had like a courtyard. People do stay there, like Marmeti. People will stay for days or a week.
Yeah.
It's
Saddam
really-
Hussein stayed at Marmeti.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
For a
Most
day,
of them
yeah.
do have courtyards. They do have rooms. They used to have hold 400 to 1,000 monks. And what would you say, like 500 or 600 AD? Something like that.
Maybe 700,000
Yeah.
AD. Actually, like around 1,000 AD.
What were some of your most blown away that you got while you were there? Like, what were you hit spiritually? What did you feel like, you know, a euphoric feeling come over you when you're standing in a certain spot?
I'm going to say 2 places, and then you can say
Go
2.
ahead.
I will say the Tilkip Church. I was nervous to go. I thought I was going to be depressed because everyone told me, you know, don't go. Like, it's really sad to see. But I'm so happy we saw it because it is beautiful. It's massive. It's literally 3 churches with a courtyard. There is the main church. I mean, to think about everyone, their baptism and marriages were in that church, even though it's in ruins. And a lot of people were crying, and I told the priest, I was like, it's still beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Because of just, I don't know, something was really spiritual. The second one I'm going to bring up, because we're related to it, is we went to so many monasteries and churches every day, and we randomly stumbled upon one in Komana. It's in the north of Iraq, and it was Marodishu. And our mothers or sisters, and their maiden name is Odish. So I didn't think much of it, and so I'm in the church. I personally was having like a spiritual experience. It was just so, it was so old, it was so humble. It was in the mountains, in a cave, and it had pomegranate trees and fig trees, and it looked like almost like Italy. It had a mountain view and everything. Someone messaged me on Instagram, one of our second cousins, and said, our great-grandparents couldn't have a child, and they prayed at Marodishu, and they named their son Odish.
Ooh.
And how many times are you going to stumble upon a place that like your great-grandparents prayed for your family?
Wow.
Yeah, and that monastery is known for
That's
people who want to have kids.
So that's just something you stumble upon. We had no idea, and you end up at the place, and I just thought that was awesome. You can share your 1 or 2 places.
I mean, definitely going over there, you're more. You definitely feel more spiritual for sure. It's a different. And then when you hear the stories from the kashas and you're visiting, it's very. You even feel more spiritual, especially like whatever happened after Daesh. Because like when I went to Baghdad, there's a monastery called Mar Behnam and Mar Sera.
True.
And there's a tomb there for them that's built from the 4th century. And Daesh tried to destroy it. They lit C4 on top and on the outside, and it didn't go down. It didn't explode. And then they tried doing it again. And this time they put it on top and inside. So the top part exploded, so the roof fell down into the tomb area, but all the C4 on the inside didn't explode. So like you're in church, you're in the homeland, and like the first day you start feeling this like spirit with you. And honestly, big question was the checkpoints. I felt like God was with us in the checkpoints
I knew that would happen.
because we didn't have any problems really in the and everyone was talking about how difficult the checkpoints would be.
We didn't know if we'd get into Tilkip.
Exactly.
We literally 1 second passed by, we're just singing, and I want to mention the beginning of the trip, you said to me, you're like, Esty, I think we're really going to get connected to God in this. I go, if it ain't here,
it ain't happening.
And then like before my trip, my grandmother told me about how she went to Mara Raha, and she mentioned, she went there and prayed for my dad, who was in America, to have a child, and that it was going to be a son, and that that night she got a call from America saying that my mom was pregnant with me. Then, and like you hear these stories.
So she was a little late because that already happened.
They were my parents.
No, I'm joking.
they were still here. My dad came earlier to escape war.
Gotcha.
And then married my mom to stay in the States.
There you go.
But,
by the way, Mar means saint, for people who may not know.
And then for maybe a lot of people don't know this, but Mar Raha was built by many Abros, Kuzas, Bahuras.
Yeah.
It's like all on the outside.
It's on the outside, and I think these places definitely should try and be repaired and give hope to not only people there, but also us to potentially go back there and visit these places in the future. Because if we lose this, it's tough to keep our culture in diaspora.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think the issue is repairing it, and I think it can be done very easily. Just a matter of what are you repairing it for?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And who?
Exactly.
Like, is it still going to be a worship place for Chaldeans or
I hope so.
Assyrians, or are they just the Muslims just going to come in and just take it away?
It is really sad. I mean, we only have 150,000 to 200,000 of our people left, but how is our community going to feel if it's 0?
Right.
Yeah.
Empty.
And
That's how we're going to feel.
We've already lost almost 1 million.
And honestly, not only that, there are other groups of people over there that are waiting for us to leave so that they can take the lands.
They can move,
but not only that, they want to absorb our culture so that they can say that's their rightful land. They're the indigenous people.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yep. Now, did you see Chaldeans in Tilkip?
Very few.
Very few.
There's only 100 people, like less than 100 Chaldeans left in Tilkip.
Maybe 200, but when we went to Talkepa, it was eerily empty.
Yeah.
Eerily empty. And then we went again, we passed through it. I mean, we saw more people, but still it was just eerily empty. I mean, it was also, partially destroyed.
Yeah.
We have hope, though.
I mean, there's definitely hope. It's geographically, like speaking, it's very situated in a potentially economically prosperous area close to Mosul and the kind of thing. It's also, very
fruitful lands.
Yeah, and they say that Talkepa is the gateway to the Nineveh Plains. If Talkepa is safe, the whole Nineveh Plains are safe.
Yeah.
So the reason why you kind of stumbled onto the Keeping Up with the Chaldeans whole thing was there was a debate going on a post that was talking about the Assyrians and the Chaldeans, and you said that you were going to educate me on what the difference was and where we all came from and how we are connected.
Sure.
So why don't you do that?
So I think you have to, for this conversation, start from just the beginning and move forward. I think a lot of times people just want to go backwards from today and see what happened. And so to start, there were Semitic people in the region, the Middle East region, Mesopotamia, and then the first major civilization was Sumer. You had city-states of Ur and Uruk down in the south near southern Iraq, near the Persian Gulf. And after the Sumerian civilization came the Akkadians. Sumerians were destroyed by and conquered by the Elamites from the east, and also the Akkadians. The Akkadians come from a city called Akkad, which is really in our region, the North Iraq. And so there's even debate that Akkadians, they spoke Sureth, they spoke Aramaic, very old, but they just call them Akkadians because they're from the city called Akkad. They had a different writing system at the time called cuneiform, which then eventually became the Phoenician alphabet. But the language, the way we speak, is the same language, but obviously over time languages change. You wouldn't go talk to somebody who spoke Old English. You probably wouldn't understand that kind of thing. So after the Akkadian Empire stretched the whole of Iraq, basic modern-day Iraq, all of Mesopotamia, Beth Narain, they say the land between two rivers. And when the Akkadian Empire fell, it split into the north, Assyria, and then the south was in Babylon. And so they were basically competing empires, but they're both descendants from the Akkadians.
Okay.
Which I just, my modern scholars will say that they are Assyrian. But the Assyrian Empire then started in the middle, just a step back, a group called the Amorites came and founded a city called Babylon. And then there was also a city in the north that was taken over by Amorite called Ashur. And by Shemshi Adad was the king in the north. And there's even actually tablets that showed direct king lineages that match for both Assyrians and the Babylonians, making an assumption that they were related even further. So eventually Hammurabi came.
Are you saying they are related or they're not related?
Related.
They are related.
They're related.
Some debate that Babylon was in
There's
Assyria.
debates. There's going to be debates on this. There's
I
old
believe it was
scholar,
all
and
Assyria.
I'm
That's my
trying to give the old and modern scholarship
Yeah.
behind this.
I'm excited to read the comments.
Yeah, I'm excited to read the comments as well. It's going to be fun.
So go ahead. I'm sorry to
So
interrupt.
no problem. So Hammurabi eventually, Assyrians grow their empire as well in the north, and Babylonians grow in their empire. Hammurabi, who wrote the first written law, eventually conquers Assyria, but it was only for a short time. Once Hammurabi died, it started to crumble, and then the Assyrian Empire really started to take over. And for many years, for about 1,000 years, from 1500 about 612, the Assyrian Empire was really the strongest empire in Mesopotamia. And one thing to note is that the Assyrians called Babylonian southern part Kardanash, and which then got translated to Greek as Chaldea. So when you hear Chaldeans a lot, you have to start thinking, is it a people or is it the regions? And I'll get to the Chaldean people in a little bit. But the south was known as Kardanash, and it's region, people from that region. And so we have Tiglath-Pileser, who comes and he kind of turned his back and killed the current king of Assyria and took over Assyria and expanded it. And then he conquers Babylon and takes total control of Babylon. And for 300 years, they start installing different kings. And when people talk about assimilation, the people didn't assimilate. It was really the noble class, upper class to create these political alignments.
Yep.
That's the type of assimilations. But so each king of Babylon that was appointed by Assyrians were Assyrian, and they called themselves kings of Babylon. And so modern scholarship will say that Nebuchadnezzar actually stems from Assyrian lineage.
Okay.
And even like Nebuchadnezzar, there's scholars will say that he never even called himself Chaldeans. Now people will say, what about Abraham in the Bible? It says Abraham came from Ur of the Chaldeans. Well, that was added of the Chaldees is what it says. And the original says from Kasdim. And it was added later on in later translations because Ur of the Chaldeans didn't exist. It was Ur of Samaria. Samaria existed like 2500, 3000 BC, and Chaldeans didn't come up until about 1100 BC, and they came from the south. And so there's really two kind of groups of Chaldeans that I've noticed in reviewing this. There's
modern time or
in the old time. Old time. So we're still in BC. Old time, and they came from the south, and they were like nomads who were tent people in swamps. Who lived in the rivers and swampy area in Iraq. Iraq in the south is very swampy. And then there are the Chaldeans who were and there's a different group of people who think the Chaldeans were the upper class of the Babylonians, the Neo-Babylonians. Nebuchadnezzar called himself Neo-Babylonian. But, so the Chaldeans came around 1100 from the south, and then, with around 800 BC, the prophet Jonah goes to Nineveh. All this is still being controlled by the Assyrians. Prophet Jonah goes to Nineveh about 800 BC, starts Ba'utha. Why Telkabnaya does Ba'utha from this event. And then there's also a prophet, Nahum, which we saw in Al-Qosh. There's a tomb there. And he came and told the Assyrians, your civilization is going to collapse. Your empire is going to collapse. In 612, Nebuchadnezzar or his father Nebuchadnezzar go and work with Medes and conquer Nineveh and take control of the region.
AD or BC?
BC.
Okay.
So then in BC, the last Mesopotamian empire becomes known as, by the Greeks, the region of Chaldea, because Nebuchadnezzar was the last one to go. Now, everyone likes to talk about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, but there isn't any archaeological site that's been found near Babylon. But modern scholarship, there was a king in Assyria called King Sennacherib, who had a garden of Hanging Gardens in Nineveh. So now modern scholarship is saying that it's not Babylon; it was actually Nineveh.
Which is our land.
Yeah. And we saw some of King Sennacherib's like bathhouse and vacation house, and it was cool. There was like lamassus in the wild, I like to say.
Wow.
They're like mountains with caves. When you say
So then Nebuchadnezzar's dynasty, what's known as the Chaldean dynasty, lasted very shortly. As soon as he died, it collapsed. It was like 50 years was his dynasty, basically his life. So after that, it was the Greeks and the Romans took control, and then Jesus came, and then Saint Thomas, traveled over to the Fertile Crescent, over to us, and converted Christians. A lot of the Christians, the Syrians in the area, were still practicing Ba'utha, not the rich and upper class, but it was tradition, and that tradition continued really until I think 600 AD, where Patriarch Ezekiel, his name was, and he basically there was a plague going on, and he said, "Oh, let's do Ba'utha and bring back those 3 days of fasting." And after they did it, it went away. So they say.
Nice. So it's Ba'utha, Ninwaya, like that's what it was called.
Both in Ninwaya, both in Ninwaya. So Mara died, and St. Thomas, they traveled to like Hakari region in the north. They just went the route of the Fertile Crescent, and then they came down from north and converted us. And there are Syrian kings in the region that were like kind of just regional kings that were being controlled by the Persians. One story in the 4th century with Marbahnam and Sarah. Their story is very interesting. Their father was the king of Assyria for the region. And if you move forward, the Church of the East and was the controlling church for up until 1,500 years, and it was the seat of the power was of the people was run by the patriarch, and it was a hereditary line by the Shemun line. It usually went from uncle to nephew, and because it was voted on, they kind of controlled the votes for the patriarch. And in 1550, around there, one of the patriarch dies, and the next patriarch gets elected hereditarily. He was 12 years old. So a guy named Yohanan Salaka, who's a monk in Ruban Hermes. This was the capital, the seat of the power, where everything was being decided. He decides to not follow. There's dispute on that, who to follow, because he was 12. So he leaves and goes to the Roman Catholic Church, and they crown him the patriarch of the Assyrian Catholic Church first. Then later they changed the title to the Chaldean Catholic Church because the Roman Catholic Church had asked other people if they want to be a Chaldean.
They just take it's not a Surah
So
word.
they went to the Ethiopian Catholics, and they said, "Do you want to become the Chaldean Catholic Church?" They said no. They went to the Cyprus. I think they started one, and it failed. So then it became, this church was the new Chaldean Catholic Church. They wanted an ode to the region of Chaldea from the Greeks, but really was the Babylonian region.
And they wanted to create a separation. They
Yeah.
wanted
And there's
us to be
politics
different.
involved with everything.
Right.
Nothing against the church or anything like that. There's just some things. And then there was then the Dominican monks and nuns came and converted to Tel Cap and converted a lot of people to Catholicism from Church of the East. And so then it became this split. It was controlled. The area was controlled by the Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire. And the Assyrian Church of the East was very nationalistic, so they had always attacked them. But at the same time, for years, they would always tell the Chaldean Catholic Church to keep their voice down, otherwise they're next, kind of thing. So you get to the Simel massacre in 1932. A couple years before that, Iraq. Well, actually, start with the Seyfu genocide. In 1918, the Turkish, Armenian, Greek genocide. They were doing those same tactics. They went and attacked the Assyrians, and then with the Chaldean Church, they told them to be quiet.
Yeah.
Because they controlled the whole region of Mosul. And to this day, Turks will still want Mosul in that region. And then after that they split up the Ottoman Empire after World War I, and the Iraq became a country. But the Assyrians, they had been armed by the British. They've been trying to get a country and negotiate with the British, who were going to deal the lines with the French. They kind of betrayed us, and with that, they're like, okay, give us our guns back. They said no, because we didn't give us a country.
Yeah.
These people are going to come after us. So they kept the guns, and they stayed in the region called Simel. They actually tried. They knew there was propaganda going on. They knew they were going to be attacked. They tried to go to Syria, which wasn't Syria at the time. It was just a new line. And the French turned them away, and so they went back. Now the new Iraqi government was run by King Faisal, but all the people under him were Turkish officials. So they also had a very strong influence on the Chaldean Church to stay quiet after this event. And they marched their army, Iraqi-sponsored the army, marched it to Simel, massacred about 6,000 people.
Wow.
And then kept the army in Mosul region to influence everybody else around there for a month. So that everyone would stay quiet. And that's kind of the history behind that. They forced Emmanuel Delhi to write a letter saying they were supportive of the Iraqi government. They convinced I think Malik Khoshaba to write a letter to the League of Nations that the Syrians were good under the Iraqi government. Totally, obviously false. They're probably being bribed, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of these patterns and basically ways to keep us separated, to not really know our indigenous aspect to us.
Yeah.
And they've used these tactics for a long time, and unfortunately, the labels have stuck. And these tactics are to keep us alive. We accept it to stay alive.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there isn't
Survival.
Yeah, exactly. So
I want to add, the protection and the survival. So the reason right now, one of the reasons right now is there's this whole Assyrian Chaldean aspect is because when all these genocides and wars were happening, Well, first I want to say I don't believe Tilkip really became Chaldean until like 1800s.
Yeah.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, most of it, yeah.
But also we were using the word Chaldean as like protection. So I believe
Yeah.
the resistance in our community where people are like, no, 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 we're Chaldean is because their families literally said, say you're Chaldean so that they don't come and attack us because Assyrians were involved in so much conflict. So it was like a marketing strategy.
Right,
When
right.
the army was in they were going through the towns and they were asking, are you Syrian? And they would say, no, I'm a Chaldean.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
Syrian? No, I'm Chaldean.
So it was like a protection and it helped.
And I would just say, just one important aspect for Telkapnaya, the city of Nineveh is 9 miles south of Telkapa.
Okay.
And it was a military outpost for Nineveh. It's north of Nineveh. It's not south of Nineveh, so it's like even farther away from where the Chaldeans came from a swamp.
True.
And so regionally, it would make sense that we are the last Ninevites, not just Assyrians, the last Ninevites.
Yeah.
Similar to the house of David, similar to the descendants of Prophet Muhammad, similar to the young Turk descendants, similar to the king and queen descendants of England. That's how we need to look at ourselves as not better than everybody else, but we should have pride in who we are and recognize that we're not just Assyrian, we're the original last Ninevite Assyrians.
Yeah.
That's kind of the historical, and that's why I wanted to go to Iraq and Nineveh Plains and old Syria. So.
I share that same passion. The fact that we're like Ninevites, my DNA said my highest likely match was Ninevite, and it was like 80-90%. So I'm so proud. And for those who don't know, like Nineveh is mentioned in the Bible so many times, and we should be so proud to be Ninevites. Like if Romans, if they were in the Bible, they literally kissed the ground to be in the Bible. So why are we not so proud of this?
And not only that, God sent prophets to only 2 nations, the Hebrews and another nation called Assyria.
Yeah.
It was, and to Nineveh specifically.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, what was your question?
So what's the gripe or issue or argument between modern day Assyrians and modern day Chaldeans? Like, why is that going on? And
they're sad that we are separate.
I'll just say, I think the older generation is kind of like this. Now we live in a world where we live in the digital age, information's at your fingertips. I think a lot of us in our generation don't even really see it like that anymore.
Yeah.
And just want to hear something, maybe like us speaking to
well, I
you.
heard a lot of chatter in the comments when I posted it was a simple invitation to kind of educate, and then it got ugly.
Well, I don't
quick.
think most people have spent 10 hours looking into it. You can have to spend a
For
little more than 10 hours. Yeah, I spent years. I mean,
Yeah.
the reason why I put this on me, this projection, I'll tell you the truth, is in freshman year of high school, Brother Rice, we just got done with Ba'utha, and my religion teacher doing the Old Testament was like, oh yeah, the book of Jonah is a fake story. It's a fictional story. And the Roman Catholics say this. There's a group, a lot of people say this. And I just was like, wait a minute. I just ate meat. I didn't eat meat for 3 days. I had to fast for all this, all for a fake story. And this story has a bunch of miracles in it. Fake stories don't have miracles in it. Not in the Bible.
Right.
I want to add, so it took me moving to San Diego when I was 25 to even learn about our history. So for me, when you ask what the gripe is online, is that Assyrians are sad that we don't even know we're Assyrian.
Yeah.
And so I want to put a couple clues onto, because there's still Chaldeans that message me today that say we're Babylonian.
Yeah.
Which are Assyrian.
Which
which
was
are
part of
Assyrian,
Assyria.
yeah.
Okay, let me tell you a couple clues. How many of our great-grandparents said they migrated, or their family migrated from Babylon to Tilkip? Not a lot. So what we know is that our family was in Tilkip, which is Nineveh. The word Suraya comes from Ashur, Assyrian, Asuriah. We speak Surith, and we celebrate Ba'utha Ninwaya.
Yeah.
So those are just 4 or 5 clues that are written that we are part of this group. So Assyrians are just really upset. I think that Chaldeans just have no idea. And as we mentioned before, it's something so beautiful to be part of. So they're also upset that we went to the Catholic Church, because Church of the East was the largest church.
What is the difference, the biggest difference between the churches?
Not much, actually. When the patriarch went to the Roman Catholic Church, we gave him the mass that all the Roman Catholic masses do today. It's based off our mass. It's based off the Church of the East. So, there are going to probably be some minute differences, but John Paul II and I want to say Patriarch Mardinka of Church of the East could be wrong on that one, but the patriarch of their
Yeah, I was
church.
going to let you know in the comments that you were wrong.
Yeah, they signed like a proclamation to allow us to both go to each other's churches and receive Eucharist.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Because they acknowledged, whatever they acknowledged.
So
Yeah.
half the churches in Iraq we went to were Church of the East. The ones that our grandpa was named like
We
Odish.
say that we share the same saints,
Yeah.
Yes.
the same language, the same geography. If you do DNA tests, I'm sorry, it's probably going to show the same DNA.
Yep,
you
yep.
know, and I just
sure.
want to say, there's nothing wrong with calling yourself Chaldean.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that we are Assyrian indigenously. You know, over time we create coalitions. You know, we can talk about what is a nation. You know, it's part of culture, similar heritage, similar traditions, similar language. In our case, civil churches. You know, nations are made up of states and regions and associations, and in our case, we have our churches.
Yeah.
We're very close. We're the first. In history, there's very few people you can point to that when a religion came, they just immediately accepted it without violence or force.
Yeah.
You know, so we have our churches, and we have become, because our churches protected us during times when we needed protection, we've stuck to our churches.
Yes.
So we stuck to Chaldeans church. We
There's-
started calling ourselves Chaldean. We stuck to the Syrians, and we say, oh, we're Syrians. And we stuck to Syriac, so we say Syriac, that kind of
Yeah.
I think there's a slight issue too because I wish there was a Chaldean seminary in Michigan. I don't want to get like too political or say something. I just think it's interesting that we study at a Roman Catholic seminary. But
I would just say also, in history, when you look at groups of people, you can point to areas like a cemetery
Yeah.
where their bodies are, laid, and like what kind of symbols there are. The Chaldean history really can't point to any cemeteries down near Babylon or down in the south. And
True.
then somebody has to explain to me how tent people, nomadic people that were living in rivers and swampy areas moved to a town 9 miles north of Nineveh and this obscure town in the world and became the most successful business people,
Yeah.
one of the most successful groups of people from this obscure town.
Yeah.
How did they go from swamp people to doing that?
it's a 6-hour drive, so I don't even know how long of a walk
probably
it would
eight,
be.
yeah.
But I just want to add too, for further clarification, like if we were called Assyrian Catholic, it probably would have caused a lot less separation. But we are
Definitely,
proud to be Chaldean.
Yeah.
We are happy that it protected us. We are flourishing
Yeah.
in Tilkap. I believe we're one of the most flourishing, people in Detroit in the
Definitely.
world.
Definitely
So
the diaspora for sure.
yeah. What other questions do you have?
So I know what we kind of went way over, so we're gonna have to cut it. But I want to pick up this conversation again with you
Sure.
and someone in the Assyrian community
Sure.
that wants to sit down and have a productive conversation to kind of educate everybody, especially myself and other
People can
Chaldeans and
recommend-
Assyrians.
people can
Yeah.
I feel like he just gave you most of it
That's
though.
good.
What else
He
did you
did.
want to
I'm
know?
one person, and I believe
so. You're going to have somebody from the other side saying that this is what it is, and this is what it is, and this is what it is. So if it's done in a controlled and professional sort of sit down, that'll help open up more questions and hopefully more answers.
Yeah, and I think this conversation is important for us
Absolutely.
to really open to the conversation, and I don't mind if people are going to correct the comment, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's okay, yeah.
And it's one way
Yeah.
that we're going to be able to save our culture,
Yes.
True.
save our heritage, save our traditions, and to really put a light on that we all have a light towards back home. Not
Yeah.
all the time, but some of the time, and so
Yeah.
we want to help back our people there, and so
For
that
sure.
not just once every 2 years a group of 20 people go on Vice News
Yep.
in Iraq trying to show our people back home what it looks like. I want my parents to go there. I want to go
Yeah.
there with my parents. I'm sure you want to go there with
Yeah,
your
for sure.
kids
Yep.
at some point if it's safe and all that.
So before we started rolling, we talked about Baghdadi catastrophe, the tragedy that happened, and we are going to put a link in the description that's going to lead where?
To Nineveh Rising,
Yes.
you can donate to their organization, and they're doing collecting money for medical supplies. Medical supplies is very limited over there.
Yeah.
I walked into 6 pharmacies trying to go buy medical supplies, but they
Yeah.
weren't open, or they were just ran out. You know, I had cash on me and all ready to
They just
spend,
didn't
and they
have
just
it.
didn't have it.
That's terrible.
You know, so
It's sad,
yeah,
but
so go to
but-
Nineveh
yeah.
Rising. I believe NinevehRising.com or .org.
.org,
We'll
yeah.
find it.
But
It'll
the
be
link,
the,
yeah.
the proper link will be in the
Sure,
thing.
yeah.
So we end every episode by asking, what does it mean to you to be Chaldean? But in this case, I'm not going to ask that. What I want to know is, what is it that makes us Chaldean?
Well, you know, I think, you know, it's, as an attorney, I actually, so these awards I mentioned that I got earlier were mainly because I think many of my clients are Chaldean.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think a lot of Chaldeans think that, you know, there's a lot of bickering between each other, but in the background, there really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our community, the tightness we have, our families, even our faith, that's what makes us Chaldean.
Yeah.
And, you know, just being here in Detroit with, you know, I live in Chicago, so every time I come here, it's really a blessing.
Yeah.
So just how tight our community is, I think, is what makes us Chaldean for sure. And just like our history is incredible. We're just not Chaldean, we're Telkapnaya. Most of us are Telkapnaya Chaldean,
Yeah.
and like I mentioned, we're the last Ninevites, so like,
You just
No,
want
it's
to
great.
start shit with everyone, don't you?
no, I want
No,
to,
what? Wait, I have a funny thing my dad said.
sunlight, you know, what did it,
I'm gonna-
sunlight's the best disinfectant. We need to, you know, recognize some of these things and,
Yeah.
and come together. That's
Yeah.
basically what it is.
Wait, I didn't tell you what my dad said. So when I first found out our Assyrian history, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, and I called my dad and I said, Dad, what is this I'm hearing about like Assyrian or Chaldean? And he said, Esty, take out your hand. You see all your 5 fingers? And they're on one hand? He's like, we're all the same.
There you go.
So that was a funny
That's the
response.
easiest way to describe it and
Yeah.
help people understand.
I want to add.
We're all in the
from-
same hand.
We are. I still don't really know what he meant by it, but I just thought it was funny that his first
Well, your
thing.
hand makes up, your fingers make up your hand, and
Yeah.
all of the communities make up one unit.
Yeah, it was very poetic
Yeah.
of him.
Yeah.
I want to add for what it means to me to be Chaldean, something about the trip that was so awesome was at the end of it, half of us found out we were cousins.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so we're going back to our homeland, and our ancestors are, to me, like overseeing this, right? And they're so proud of us, and
Yeah.
it's like they're probably half of them are the same
To,
people.
to
Right.
quote my new cousin Thomas Davish,
Yeah.
Yeah,
have you ever had a home you've never been to?
Yeah.
And that was kind of like how
This is it.
this is it.
It was so fun. I want to add, yeah. So like for me being Chaldean is that I get to go back to our homeland with my cousin, and that I'm close with my family, and that we end up finding we're related. And what other trip are you going to go on that you end up finding you're related to half of the
Yeah.
people that we're strangers?
That's
And we told our stories. Each person in our community has some of these stories.
Oh yeah.
And if we don't like think about going back there or whatever, all these stories are gonna be lost.
Yeah.
You know, and they're honestly beautiful stories. I think, you know, our stories can be shining a light here in America as well.
That's beautiful.
I have one last question for you, as your former co-host.
Sure.
What part to you is the most interesting that you would want to see, or do you have a desire to go?
Back home?
Yes.
So I don't know enough about it. It's probably going to be Tilkepe.
Yes.
It's going to be, you know, the church. It's going to be
Very moving.
It's going to be the water source. It's going to be the grain source. It's going to be all of the things that were the production or the productive side of Tilkepe and how we provided, you know, food and grain and all of these things to all of the different regions surrounding Tilkepe, a small little town made of nothing, just a bunch of farmland.
Babylonian money magic.
Babylonian, there you go.
Babylonian money magic.
There you
The
go.
church was amazing. I mean, like,
It was really.
we were
actually.
even saying we would, like, if we ever got married, you know, we'd want to go there. Like,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's really spiritual.
No.
So
What would give our community more hope than a wedding in Telkepe?
how amazing would it be to have your wedding in our church?
That's
like,
a heck of a-
Any takers?
yeah.
That's what you call a destination wedding.
So,
All right. Well,
Thank
thanks for
you.
joining us,
Yeah,
guys. We'll see you all out there in TV land. Kind of
Thanks for
TV
having
land.
me
Of
again.
course.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.